The New York Post's Miranda Devine writes President Biden's call to the former Afghan president is an impeachable offense. And well before this, Republicans actually have called for Biden's impeachment or resignation. Our running count stands at about 50 different lawmakers, in fact, who have joined in this chorus. But Mitch McConnell thinks impeachment is unlikely and the matter will be decided at the ballot box.
If the president's not going to be removed from office, if the Democratic House, narrowly Democratic Senate, that's not going to happen. I think the way these behaviors get adjusted in this country is through the ballot box. There isn't going to be any impeachment, but I think they have a good chance of having a very bad election next year, and we have a good chance, I think, of stopping them between now and then.
Tammy Bruce is a Fox News contributor. Tammy, thank you so much for talking to us today. What should we make of these reports that Biden pressured the Afghan president, the former Afghan President Ghani, to change the, quote, perception that things aren't going well in the Taliban fight?
Well, and he also said, I think, as many people now know, to say that whether it was true or not, that was acknowledged in the call that this would be false. And, you know, the Congresswoman's comments were right on point. When you're the president, what is so difficult about recognizing the truth? The only truths we have now are that Afghanistan exists and that 13 of our U.S. service members were murdered, because those things can't be hidden. Virtually every single thing that has been said about this situation has been untrue, partly untrue, manufactured, and this is why there's a legitimacy problem. And I'm also particularly concerned, you know, because this tells you, by the way, that the entire premise of what Biden was telling the American people also was false. He said he had no idea. They had no concept that this was going to happen. But part of that call was recognizing that the Taliban were there, that they were out of control, that they had taken over at least half the country. That's why Biden was trying to tell him to lie. Why would he need to lie if everything was fine? That means Biden was lying to all of us about this, leading to that turkey shoot at that airport. But for McConnell to suggest, and look, they didn't have a problem with Nixon. When Nixon was in trouble, it was clear that there was impeachment. Pretty much all the Republicans agreed, certainly the Democrats at that time. Why there aren't more than 25 signatories on that letter or 50 lawmakers who think he should be impeached or resign? Why isn't it more? Why don't they want Kamala Harris to be president? It's not as though they would lose the White House. This is an outrageous situation. It is nonpartisan. A supermajority of Americans agree that this is a problem and that they don't trust what's happening. So I'm concerned about Congress and its wavering. The Republican Party's seemingly ambivalence about this. That should trouble Americans as well.
Tammy, we're hearing more from some of the parents of the American troops killed in last week's attack at Kabul airport, and the stories are grim. The father of Jared Schmitz slamming how President Biden acted during their face-to-face meeting. Listen.
As he's looking at this picture of my son, I just flat out said to him, that's Jared Schmitz. Don't ever forget that name, and don't forget the name of the 12 others. And you need to spend some time learning their stories, who they were. And then that's when he kind of, I've described it as barking back, because I don't know how else to really describe it. But he says, I know their stories. First thought was, that's literally impossible, you know, and why are you arguing with me? And then, of course, he mentions his son again.
Outrage still lingers over the president checking his watch as well, several times during the dignified transfer ceremony at Dover Air Force Base. I mean, Tammy, the hits keep on coming, but sadly, the president brought this onto himself, which begs the question, why? He had one job to do at that ceremony that was honoring those 13 fallen service members, men and women, families who lost their loved ones, and instead he checked his watch. He dismissed a Gold Star parent that tried to talk about their son. And sons and daughters lost, and he talked about his own son instead. These are the lack of empathy is just head scratching.
Yeah. Well, this is what's so shocking, and it's interesting that that's how they tried to portray him, of course, in the campaign, because they knew that mattered. But it had to be a portrayal because they knew he didn't have any. You know, this is multiple newly minted Gold Star families, people who are still in shock over the deaths, the unnecessary deaths of their loved ones, of their children, of their husbands, of their daughters, etc. And that one Gold Star mom says he actually rolled his eyes at her. So this is a part of, I have to tell you, Julie, that this is part of the framework of this, why all of this exists, is that there's only one person that matters, and that's Joe Biden. It's malignant narcissism. When you can't think past yourself, the impact of what you do on other people does not matter. It's not even a consideration. It's not like he's hostile. It's just like it's an irrelevant framework. That's why he doesn't understand these other parents. This is why every issue we face here at home matters and is a disaster right now, and why his team is surrounding him, is helping to facilitate this kind of obscenity.
Tammy Bruce.
It's horrible. It's a horrible shame.
It is, indeed. Thank you so much.